This is the Sales Babble Podcast, episode 247, The Gift of GAB, an interview with Conor Cunneen.
Welcome to Sales Babble, the podcast that shares selling secrets for non-sellers. And now your host, Pat Helmers.
Hello, Sales Babblers. This is Pat Helmers, and today we have a little bit of blarney and inspiration from our guest, Conor Cunneen, who joins us in the Sales Babble studio. Conor is an Irishman happily exiled in Chicago, where he says that the Guinness is great, the natives are friendly, and he has been force-fed more corned beef than he's ever had in Ireland. In this episode, Conor shares with us the gift of GAB, goals, attitude, and behaviors that all salespeople should aspire. So, with no further ado, let's get to it. Welcome, Conor. Are you ready to babble?
Hey, Pat, ready to rock and roll, my man.
Conor, I've been seeing you speak for a long time. You are known as the Irishman Speaks, correct?
That is right. Brand is Irishman Speaks. Website is Irishman Speaks. Twitter handle is Irishman Speaks.
And I saw you talk, I don't think, was it like a month ago, maybe 5 weeks ago, at the Aurora Sales Institute over at Aurora University.
Yeah.
Excellent talk.
Thank you.
I've been listening to you speak for many, many years, and you've always been entertaining, But this time, not only was it entertaining, it was extremely informative, and I thought, wow, I've got to get the Sales Babble audience to hear your message.
Right. Well, delighted to be here, and we can go through the concept, which was based around, as you saw, the gift of GAB.
The gift of GAB.
Yeah. Which, surprise for an Irishman, you say.
But before we get to that, why don't you tell the folks a little bit about you? You're clearly not from the Midwest.
That's right. I tell people I come from New Jersey, Pat, but no one believes that either. I came over. I've been working on my Chicago accent for about 20 years now. I'm a bit slow. Haven't got it down yet. But when I came over originally, I was VP of marketing with a company called Best Foods, and then we were taken over by Unilever. So the main brand you would know is the Hellmann's Mayonnaise. That would be one of the main brands that we had. And a few years after coming over here, Unilever wanted me to go back to Rotterdam in Holland, which is their major European hub. And for family reasons, I said no. So, as I say, I told them to get stuffed. They told me get stuffed, and we had a mutual stuffing. And since then, I've morphed into Irishman Speaks. And the basic mission in life is to improve people, performance, and productivity with a smile.
People, performance, and productivity.
With a smile, yeah.
So how long have you been in the States?
20 years, Pat. Yeah.
That's a long time.
It's actually 20 years this month. Well, yeah. And we originally came over for only 3 years. So I'm not particularly good at math, obviously, but really enjoy it here now.
I'm half Irish.
Right.
My mother was a Morrissey. Yeah, I think they came here in the 1870s and never went back.
Yeah. Well, no one ever went back in those days. I mean, I was at a time when they had to leave Ireland because there was no jobs, there was no education, and no prospects. So they came to the America, as they were calling it, the land of dreams. And the Irish have done very, very well. After a tough time, I mean, they were treated as second-class citizens, third-class citizens for a long time.
Irish need not apply.
That's right, yeah. It was a regular cant in those days. I mean, the Irish, they dug all of the canals, that built a lot of the construction in the 1800s. And the Irish actually were treated, quite honestly, as badly, if not worse, a lot of the time than the slave population, who had dreadful times as well. But the slaves were assets to the slave owner, Pat. The Irish guys were just disposable. And there's thousands of them died.
But interestingly enough, once they got in power in New York, then they started doing the same kind of treating people wrong.
They were pretty good at counting votes. Yeah.
That's Chicago.
Yeah.
Voting machine. But we're not here to talk about that.
Yeah.
We're here to talk about GAB. And when we usually think of GAB, we think of speaking, but that's not what you mean, right?
Yeah, it's not what I mean. I kind of play a little bit to my Irish heritage with the gift of GAB. But basically, GAB for me, Pat, is an acronym for goals, attitude, behavior. Goals, attitude, behavior. And if you're in any aspect of business, but particularly the sales side and the leadership side, you've got to have clear goals. You got to have the right attitude, and you got to have the right behavior. And for most salespeople, the ultimate reason why someone will purchase from them is whether or not there's a relationship with them. Very few salespeople have got a product that is really differentiated. So to a great extent, you're selling a similar product to your competition. Ultimately, at the end of the day, it's your brand and your relationship with that client that will determine whether they pick Pat or whether they pick Paul or Jeff.
So when you mean brand, you actually mean your brand, you as the person.
I basically mean, your personal brand. I mean, no matter what kind of sales you're in, the personal brand is critical. I genuinely do think that if you're selling aviation, or whether you're selling things like newspapers or canned goods, ultimately the person is going to make a decision partly on the intrinsics of the product, but to a great extent on whether or not they like that person. And for so many of the people that are listening to this podcast, Pat, their core brand is what differentiates them. If you're a realtor, it's your brand that's going to determine whether you get referrals or not. If you're in wealth management, it's your brand that will really determine whether you're going to get the business or not. So I play a lot on the concept of goals, attitude, and behavior, and how having the right goals, the right attitude, and the right behavior will help have people saying, hey, I want to deal with that person. And when they deal with that person, and you've shown the right goals and attitude and behavior, they'll recommend you to someone else. It is a powerful tool and framework for salespeople.
This is extremely timely, because right now we're doing this interview. It's the second week of December, and it's 2019's at the door.
Right.
And it's time for us to start thinking about what our goals are and all that. So so why don't we dig into this? Want to dig into that?
Yeah, let's go digging. Let's go take out the shovel, man. Let's go digging.
That's what those Irish are good at. They're good at digging holes.
Yeah. Yeah. Except we don't stop digging when we dig the hole. That's the problem. Just keep going.
So, goals.
Right. Goals. Basically what I talk about, you've seen some of the anecdotes that I give. We won't go into them in a lot of detail here, but ultimately
They're funny.
They are funny, and they're appropriate as well. And one of the anecdotes I give references Howard Schultz, who's the driving force behind Starbucks. And I basically talk that he was walking the streets of Chicago very early in the Starbucks business empire. He had come to Chicago to open the first Starbucks unit outside of Seattle, and he extolled what I would call as a clear goal and a clear vision to his business colleague. And he said that in 5 years' time, everyone on this street will be walking around with a Starbucks cup in their hand. And to a great extent, he's actually fulfilled that. But he fulfilled it, I think, partly because he had a clear idea of what he wanted to achieve. And he also then put in train some ideas to make it happen. So when I'm dealing with workshops, we do go into some detail as to how to create clear goals and vision, but it's a difficult concept. So I bring it down to something a lot simpler, Pat, and I ask people to write down, what do I want to be famous for? And if you can know as a salesperson or as a leader what you want to be famous for, you have a much better chance of being successful at it. And what I say is that the way to bring it home is that let's assume that your industry magazine is doing Person of the Year, and you're Person of the Year. What is it that they are saying about you? What is the headline that is the reason why you have got the Person of the Year? And if you know what I want to be famous for, you have a much better chance then of actually making it happen.
Love it. Love it, love it, love it.
Yeah. So it's that's the, or what I refer to as the macro goal. That's kind of like, we're going to climb Mount Everest. But to climb Mount Everest, so you've got to achieve a lot of micro goals as well. And then I talk a lot about the importance of micro goals, particularly for salespeople and people who are in positions of influence or positions of persuasion.
What I like about this macro goal, it's almost like that goal, it's something to talk about. If you were to write your own obituary, what should it say?
That's right, yeah. It's the same kind of thing, yeah. But you got to give it some thought. And I think for a lot of people, they just go out to work on Monday morning and they finish work in the afternoon, and then they go to work again the following day, and not having a clear idea what it is they want what their legacy is in a sense.
Right,
But
right.
sometimes when people talk about legacy, they talk about legacy kind of in a grander and in a community kind of sense or family sense. Let's just look at your legacy here in the business sense. What is it that I want to be famous for within my business environment? What is it I want my clients to say about me after I have dealt with them?
Gotcha. So let's say we got that macro goal figured out.
Right.
We've written that down.
Yeah.
What will be the next step?
Next step is I then talk about the importance of what I refer to as micro goals. And as a professional speaker, Pat, who works really hard to make sure people remember my content, I believe very strongly in the power of acronyms. So to make this simple for the listeners here today, the acronym I'm going to reference is CHAPS. CHAPS.
Got it.
Right.
Chaps.
Chaps. Okay, so you're all listening now, chaps and chapesses too.
Chapesses.
Chapesses. The basic idea here is that I put 5 micro goals that if you adopt them will make a real difference to your relationship with your client. And the first micro goal is, well, I'll ask you a question, Pat. When someone compliments you, you obviously feel better and more motivated,
Absolutely,
yeah?
absolutely,
Right.
yeah.
Okay. So when someone compliments you, you feel a closer bond to that person?
Absolutely.
Okay, so we'll turn it around. If you compliment someone, is it quite likely that they're going to feel more motivated?
They're going to
Right?
like you.
And if you compliment someone, is it
Yes.
quite likely they're going to have a better relationship with
yes,
you?
yes, yeah.
So basically what I say is C is about compliment. And rather than just asking questions about compliment, what I do is I ask people then to put it into a micro goal. And the micro goal is I will compliment one person today. And when I compliment that one person, the reason why I set them as micro goals, there was an English 19th century author by the name of Anthony Trollope. And Trollope said, a small daily task, if truly done daily, will beat the labours of a spasmodic Hercules. A small daily task, if truly done daily, will beat the labours of a spasmodic Hercules. So what I say to people is that if you can achieve these goals on a consistent basis, you're going to progress forward big time. And the other reason why I talk about goals, Pat, is that when we achieve a goal, there's a neurochemical in our brain called dopamine. And the dopamine is actually known as the feel-good chemical. And the feel-good chemical dopamine kicks in when you achieve your goal. So if we can set these as micro goals, the idea is you'll feel better about yourself because you've achieved your micro goals. Your client, your customer, or your work colleague will feel better because you've done something to aid or help them. It's a win-win situation.
I like that. I like that a lot. Reminds me of Lao Tse's quote, the journey of 1,000 miles starts with a single step.
Yep.
If we do a series of single steps, we're going to go 1,000 miles over time.
Dead right, yeah. You've got to start and make it happen. And that's one of the things I also referenced. I think you mentioned it prior to we started getting going with this interview, that you got to be intentional about doing this. And that's what I say to people. Know what I want to be famous for, and then be intentional about these chaps' micro goals.
Compliment, C.
Right. So compliment is C. My micro goal is I will compliment one person today, colleague or a customer, whatever it is. Once you do that, you'll see it makes you feel better, makes the customer or client feel better, and you'll encourage you to do it again. H is for hear. And you're probably saying, or your listeners are saying, what did he say? I said hear, as in H-E-A-R. Hear the words, thank you. Now, when I reference this at the programs on the Gift of GAB, the first kind of reaction I often see is people are saying, what the heck is the Irishman talking about now? And what I mean there is that in the last 24 hours, I'm sure, Pat, someone has said thank you to you, because I know you're a generous and a giving guy, but it's probably gone over your head. But what I'm asking you to do is to set yourself a goal that I will hear the words thank you when I'm at work or with colleagues, with my sales team or with my customer. The idea is that for me to hear the words thank you, which I've set as a micro goal, I'm going to have to do something for my client or for my work colleague. When I do that something and I hear the words thank you, dopamine kicks in. I feel better about myself because I say, hey, I've achieved my goal.
Yeah.
And your client or customer, hey, they're feeling better because you've done something for them.
Right.
So it makes a real difference, Pat, to the way your client sees you or your sales team sees you as well. If you're a leader of a sales team, this CHAPS concept is as powerful for you as it is when you're dealing with your customer as well.
That's right. Gotcha.
Yeah. So we're talking about compliment, hear the words thank you. The third element in the CHAPS concept, Pat, is address. Now, as you heard me say at the Aurora Sales Institute, that wasn't the kind of little pink chiffon outfit that I was wearing last weekend. We'll keep that off the interweb, okay? Photographs have been deleted, my people, all right? But by address here, I mean address your colleagues or your customer with their name during the conversation. And
Connor, I know exactly what you mean, Connor. Because Connor, I so respect the things that you have to say.
Right. Well, thank you very much for the compliment as well, you see, Pat. We're rocking here, my brother, yeah? We got compliment here, address. But the power of the addressing people with their names, I genuinely do believe that the most powerful words in your vocabulary is your name. And the most powerful words in your customer's vocabulary is their name. And the way I address that is that, let's say you were at some event last night, some party, and you were chatting in one side of the room, and there's another conversation going on the other side of the room. You're not paying any attention to it until someone mentions Pat Helmer's name. And suddenly Pat's ears pop up and you hear what they're actually saying just for a couple of seconds. The reason why that happens is because your name is a really powerful and visceral communication device. And if you can actually get into the habit of, during a conversation with people once or twice, to mention their name, you're going to create a bond and a visceral
It makes it
event with
easier for me to remember their name if I repeat their name
Dead
back
right.
like 2-3 times.
Yeah, dead right. And we're not good at doing it. But I think if you can, without overplaying it, because I think I've been asked a few times, well, can you overdo this? Yes, you can. But Pat, when I'm telling you, Pat, can you overdo it, Pat? You definitely can overdo it, Pat. So don't overdo it, Pat. Okay? But use the person's name in conversation. So we got compliment, hear the words thank you, address people by name. P is positive. Positive, yeah. And logic behind this is that we're all creatures of our environment, and we've all seen, Pat, people who are Debbie Downers or Danny Downers who suck the energy out of the room. Mainly because they're using negative words, negative phrases, negative comments, and nothing is ever right.
Do you light the room when you enter it or when you leave?
Absolutely, yeah. Dead right. I think, was it Steve Carell in The Office on one occasion, he was saying, getting it all backwards as only Steve Carell would do. He says, people kind of applaud when I leave the room. He didn't realize they were applauding because he left the room, kind of thing. Yeah. So, but that's the point about it, is what is the aura that you create? And simple little ideas like using positive words can make a real difference. If you get into the habit of using words like amazing, brilliant, cheerful, friendly, etc. during a conversation, or appropriately positive words or phrases, very, very subtly, you're shaping the person's thought process about you.
Yes.
And the more you can be seen to be using amazing, brilliant, cheerful, friendly, etc. words, I think after a period of time, your clients or your customers or your work colleagues are going to be saying, hey, there's something amazing, brilliant, cheerful, friendly about that person as well. You're creating a brand experience. You're creating that brand behavior that is so important when it comes to the gift of gab.
Love it.
Right.
We're almost there.
Right. And so we got compliment, hear the words thank you, address people with their name, positive words, and S is about smile. And the logic here is that I'm not asking you to smile. I'm asking you to set yourself a micro goal that I will put a smile on my customer's face or on my sales team's face or on my colleague's face. So when I put a smile on their face, what am I going to do? Smile back.
Smile back.
Yeah, right. And there's simple little things you can do during sales presentations or during sales meetings. In fact, I often say that when I'm dealing, irrespective of which group I'm dealing with, whether it's leadership group, sales groups, marketing, or any other group, if you're having regular, let's say, weekly meetings, which kind of after a while can kind of we're here again kind of thing. One of the ways to add a little bit of luster and creativity and humor to the meeting is that the first thing on the agenda should be a joke from someone. So you actually say to Michael, who's the next one up next week, you've got to tell us a joke next week. And then the following week, you ask Genevieve to tell a joke, etc. Now, the idea is that if they tell a joke, it's going to get a little bit of lightness and humour into the room, so it raises the mood in the room. And I don't care whether it's a good joke or a bad joke. In fact, a bad joke is probably even better.
Just as funny.
It's just as funny, yeah.
Right,
so
because we would say, I can't believe you
I
said
can't
that.
believe you. Oh, my God almighty. Is that the best you could come up with? But what's happening?
I'm laughing already.
Yeah, that's
And
it,
we
yeah.
haven't even told a joke
Yeah,
yet. I'm
that's
laughing.
right. Yeah. So that's it does change the vibe in a meeting. It really does. And everyone can do it because you can just get onto the, as I say, Google and the Bing. Get onto the Googler and Google on the Bing for jokes about lawyers, about salespeople, about marketing people, leadership, whatever it is.
Excellent.
So, chaps, 5 micro goals that if you implement them will definitely help you to achieve your macro goal of what do I want to be famous for.
Gotcha. I think our next parts of GAB is the attitude.
Attitude, yeah. Well, when we're talking about sales, obviously, having the right attitude is critical. And I remember when I was back in food service years ago, one of my senior leaders, who was a guy I really respected, he said, the best piece of advice I ever got, that he had ever got, and he then passed on to me, was wait staff who once said, I'm at the table when I'm at the table. And I'm giving all my attention to that table when I'm there, and I've got the right attitude. And in the sales business, we always think that we've got to have the right attitude when we're dealing with our customers, which is obviously true. Not always easy to do because some of our customers are difficult. But I mean, if you come across as being boneheaded, pig-headed, or just not very happy, it's not going to build a relationship. But the other thing I really do believe, Pat, about attitude is that so many salespeople forget that their success is based on customer support, on the back office, what's happening at headquarters, back at the call center, or wherever it is. And one of the things I've seen over the years is that the hard-driving, aggressive type A type of salesperson, they rarely think about the support levels behind them. So what I really do ask people to in the sales field to consider is pay attention not just to your attitude of the customer, pay attention to the supply chain behind you.
I've heard this before, because to a certain degree, they are the liaison between the customer and the customer success people.
Yeah.
And in your job to a certain degree is to broker all that, because
Right.
you're the face of the company.
Yeah, yeah. But you're just one nut in that, or one bolt in that overall mechanism, an important one. But if you annoy the people at the back office or customer support or something like that, you want people to go the extra yard for you. If you come across as being a jerk on a consistent basis, they're not going to go the extra yard.
That's how you're going to get the upsell.
Yeah.
They're not going to come. They're not going to want to do more business with you.
Yeah,
If you don't provide them a superb experience.
yeah, yeah.
Yeah.
It's true. So what I say is that you've got to ask yourself the question, when things go wrong, or we'll just do when things go wrong first. The question is, what do I want my attitude to be? What do I want my attitude to be? And so if a contract falls through, or someone in supply leaves you down, you can go crazy. I fully understand that, and it's fully a normal reaction. But you've got to then ask yourself the question, what do I want my attitude to be? And you can say, all right, I want to be still peed off and angry, or I can say, all right, I don't want this to ruin the relationship I've got with the customer or with the client. So it can make a difference. But I also do think, Pat, that question is really powerful before things go wrong. Or let's say you've got a difficult meeting with a customer who's given you some hassle over the last 3 or 4 months, or you've got a difficult meeting with a salesperson who you need to encourage to get more productivity or sales or better revenue generation. And you know it could be a high tense meeting. If you ask yourself before the meeting, what do I want my attitude to be? You're not going to say, I want this meeting to be a disaster. I want it to just break out into an argument. When you say, what do I want my attitude to be before the meeting? You'll say, hey, I need to get something out of this meeting. I need to calm the waters with this client. I need to make sure that this client will actually open the door for me the next time I come in again, etc. So it's a powerful question. And I've got a video on my YouTube channel. It's actually I know you've seen the story about when I was stopped by a cop here in the Chicagoland area.
Yeah.
So if anyone is interested in a really fun video, and I think we'll probably put it as a link to this program afterwards. On as I refer to as the mobile discotheque story.
You know, you're an expert at YouTube. This is a bit of a segue, but I saw you speak on actually on search engine optimization. On using YouTube like 2 months ago.
Right.
So it's a Conor Cunneen year, you know.
Right.
and you've really nailed getting getting people very niched down.
Yeah.
And that's been that's really phenomenal, the work that you've done.
Yeah, I mean, I've got quite a bit of business from people doing Google search and finding my videos. So, for instance, an example I would give you is that I got an event up in Wisconsin last year from one of the military barracks up there, and I said, "How did you find me?" And she said, "I Googled pay it forward speaker." She was looking for someone to speak for their volunteers. And I said, "Oh, that's very interesting. If your listeners actually Google pay it forward speaker, I would be very surprised if at least one of my videos doesn't pop up on the home page."
Excellent.
And I haven't paid for any advertising. So what I've done is I try to listen to what the words and the phrases people are using, Pat, and then I create the video, tag the video, title the video with the appropriate words, and off we go.
Excellent.
Yeah.
Excellent. We should do SEO on this podcast someday. I've talked twice about it this year, and I have never talked about it even.
Right. Well, more than happy to. I mean, I get business. I mean, business I got in October, for instance. I was in Bermuda. Did a Bermuda dental conference. I said, "How did you find me?" She said, "I Googled for motivational speaker, dental healthcare kind of thing." And if you do a search using humorous motivational speaker, dental practice, I would bet my videos pop up. Now, that's what I mean about niche. You need to... I'm not trying to get thousands of subscribers. That's a different marketing strategy. I don't use that. What I do is I want to get found by clients who are looking for some of my skill set. I did an event up in Prince Edward Island in October in Canada. They found me through Google search. They were looking for humorous, motivational speaker, nursing, healthcare. I pop up.
What do they call it? They call that the long tail search.
Basically, that's what it is, yeah?
Yeah.
Yeah, and when you get... I videotape a lot of my presentations, or I get them videotaped, and I can do the editing myself. It's not difficult to do. Pop those up on YouTube. So I've got numerous videos up there, things like humorous motivational speaker, motivational sales speaker, sales inspirational speaker, that kind of thing, using basically the same videos but tagging them and titling them differently based on what I think you or someone else might be searching for.
So interesting. But with that said, get us back on track here.
Right, let's get back on track. Okay.
Behavior.
All right, behavior. Basic idea here, Pat, is that, and for salespeople, this is so true, your behavior creates your brand. Your behavior determines what people say about you. And what people say about you is your brand. So your behavior creates your brand. Your behavior determines what people say about you. What people say about you is your brand. So the question is...
what people say about you.
Yeah, is your brand.
That's really insightful.
Yeah.
It's not what you say about you.
Dead right. Yeah. I mean, the example I use, and I sometimes feel sorry for them, but United's brand message is the friendly skies. And when I reference that at speaking engagements, the audience kind of groans or laughs kind of thing. Because while United has so many good, competent, friendly, capable employees, for various reasons, they've got a really bad and poor brand reputation when it comes to customer service. So even though they claim friendly skies...
Maybe it's because they drag people out down the aisle that don't belong in that seat.
That doesn't help, I must admit. Yeah. Not a good move on that one. But in terms of being unlucky, I was actually the Chicago or O'Hare policing authority that dragged the person off. It wasn't actually United did it,
I
but
know.
it was on a United plane.
Actually, I
kind
just
of thing.
flew in United
Yeah.
3 weeks ago over
Yeah.
Thanksgiving, and they were terrific.
Most of 90. Here's the problem: 98%, probably 99% of United's customers are happy, but the 1%, there's so many of them out there. This, as with the American or other airlines, 1% is a huge number now, and when that 1% or even half of that 1% puts a message out on viral on social media, bang,
And that's a lesson for us.
it
Because the
is.
same thing goes with each of us
Yeah.
and our personal brand.
Yeah.
It only takes us to behave bad once.
Yeah, it does. Yeah, and you can ruin years of good behaviour. And the problem we've all got is that you and me, Pat, are the only people who have never been jerks in our life. All right?
Isn't that bizarre?
Isn't it? We're the only perfect people that we've on this whole world. Everyone else has made mistakes, and unfortunately, sometimes when you make a mistake, the video camera or the iPhone is there and it can mess you up. So we've all got to be really careful, especially when we're in a public environment or in a professional environment, that we don't do something stupid, say something stupid, because it will come back to bite
Especially
us
these
big time.
days.
Yeah.
Politicians, CEOs. Oh,
Yeah.
my goodness.
Yeah.
Something they said many, many years ago.
Yeah.
It's-
So,
Apologize. Quickly apologize.
quickly apologize.
And,
Yeah.
and take full ownership of it.
Yeah.
My
Yeah.
fault. Me bad.
Yeah.
All me.
Yeah, it's true. Yeah. And things can be just taken out of context so easily as well. But this goes back to your behavior creates your brand. Your behavior determines what people say about you. What people say about you is your brand. So what I ask people to consider is, all right, what is your brand? Now, then I go to the question is, you need to know what you want your customers to say about you so that you can create that brand, drive towards it. And the basic exercise I give people, Pat, is I say to them, take out your business card and write down the 3 words you want your customers to say about you after you have left the sales meeting, after you've left the presentation. Yeah.
I like that. 3 words they're going to say about you after you've left the room.
Yeah. And the question then is, if you know what those 3 words are, do you know how to make them happen? So if you say you want to be proactive, knowledgeable, seen as being caring, for instance, right, what is it I will do during my presentation that will show that I am proactive, knowledgeable, and caring? And if I know what I want them to say, if I know how I'm going to present myself so that they actually do have that belief or feeling about me, I'm creating the kind of brand behavior that I know will get me repeat business.
Excellent. GAB.
The gift of GAB, goals, attitudes, behavior. And it's a powerful concept, Pat. It's easy for people to remember. It goes back to the power of acronyms again. And the next time you hear the gift of GAB, you will think not just maybe of people just spewing out voluminous torrents of words, but also maybe they'll think about what the Irish guy was talking about, goals, attitudes, behavior, and how it would help any sales team, any salesperson to generate extra revenue and productivity.
Now, we've said this before, but I think it bears repeating. How can people find you online?
My objective, Pat, is to be all over the web like a rash. So, in terms of from people who are looking for a humorous motivational speaker or leadership speaker, I pop up a lot when they're just doing Google searches like that. My website is Irishman Speaks. Email address is cc@irishmanspeaks.com. The LinkedIn profile is Irishman Speaks. Twitter handle is Irishman Speaks as well. Or they can just phone me at 630-718-1643.
And I love it. Crisp, clear call to action.
Yep.
Call me. Here's my phone number.
Yeah. Yeah.
No muddling.
Yeah.
No muddling at all. You have some books here.
Yeah, I'm a multiple author, as I like to be referred as. I've written a couple of books on Mark Twain. I've also written a book on business strategy, which has got the rather unique and interesting title of Why Ireland Never Invaded America. That was actually a book I wrote a few years back. I need to do an updated edition on it, but it got really good response over the years. It's a fun book told in story form about business strategy and some good ideas around goals, attitudes and behaviour are in that. More than happy to give a copy of that to your listeners. And then we've got 2 books on Mark Twain. As we spoke before the event, I am a big Mark Twain fan. And one of them is What Mark Twain Learned Me About Public Speaking. And I've got an online program I'm ready to launch on that in the next couple of days. And then we've got Mark Twain's book, Suppose You Were an Idiot, Mark Twain on Politicians and Politics. And the logic behind this is that as I was reading Twain, I realized he was a very avid social commentator. His opinion of politicians and politics would be very similar to what a lot of people have of politicians and politics right now. And he once said, suppose you were an idiot, suppose you were a congressman, but I repeat myself. So
I'm a huge fan of Twain.
Yeah.
Before we started turning on the recorder, we were talking about Mark Twain. That's he was very, very, very clever, and everybody wanted to know what he thought.
Yeah, he really was, and very, very perceptive as well. I mean, he spoke about politicians like in a really acerbic and critical manner. He said that fleas can be taught almost anything that congressmen can. And all the comments he made was the only Native American criminal class is Congress. So he got pretty vicious at times about it. He was burgled on one occasion, Pat, and he made a comment afterwards that the burglars are now in jail, and if they continue this way, they'll end up in Congress. So... So the book is Suppose You Were...
He's amazing.
Yeah, Suppose You Were an Idiot, Mark Twain on Politics and Politicians. So we got a copy of that as well.
Conor Cunneen, thank you for visiting us here in Sales Babble. This has been great.
It's been a pleasure, Pat. Yeah.
As we mentioned during the interview, Conor is graciously giving us 3 books to raffle off. So if you'd be interested in winning one of these books, go to the Sales Babble website, click on the Babble Me button, and then and send me a message there and say, Pat, I'd love to win, and I'll stick you in the raffle, and I'll pick people out randomly. If you want to learn more about Conor, if you'd like to have him come speak at your company, go to www.salesbabble.com/247, and you can find all the links to Conor and the Irishman Speaks. Try Googling him. You'll see him all over the place. If you Google The Irishman Speaks or Conor Cunneen, you'll see he is all over the place. He has got this SEO stuff nailed down. As I've mentioned the week before, we have lots going on this month, even though Christmas is just around the corner, a week from today. Neil Christensen will be visiting the Sales Babble studio, and we will have our much-loved top 10 sales and marketing tools of 2018. Don't want to ever miss that. It's always fun, always informative, really great stuff. And on New Year's Day, there'll be an episode coming out to talk about goal planning so you can get yourself ready for the year 2019. Hey, I got some good news. I just got picked by HubSpot as a top sales podcast. Woohoo! Ding, 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 ding. Pretty pumped about that. You can find that on the website, too, a link to that. So before we go, I do want to say that if you got a question or a comment, don't hesitate to reach out and connect with me. You can find me at that same Babble Me button that I just mentioned earlier before. Send me an email, and I'd be more than happy to answer any and all questions that you might have. That's all I've got for now. Until next week, until Christmas, take care and have a highly successful and a profitable selling day.
Thank you for listening to the Sales Babble podcast. Find us at www.salesbabble.com.